Hi, I'm Teare, and today I'm going to be working on an acrylic painting that I started a few days ago. And in this painting, what I want to try to do is paint with acrylics, but exactly like the way I paint with oils. So there's a tendency with acrylic paints to paint a little thinner, and people sort of scrub the paint on and it sort of goes on thin, and people who paint in gouache, for example, sometimes can transition very easily over to acrylics, if they paint that way, in that sort of thin manner with maybe a lot of cross hatching or blocks of color with very sharp edges. But the way I want to paint tonight is a very alla prima, or that is, all at once, very wet, wet into wet style of painting with very, very thick strokes. And there's a few tricks you can kind of use to make that a lot easier. After the painting dries, I will be scribbling a little bit and adjusting the values with a few glazes. But one of the nice things about an acrylic painting is it dries very quickly, and I can glaze almost immediately when I'm done. Maybe if the paint layer is really thick, I might have to wait maybe an hour or two. But one thing you have to remember about paint, or acrylic paint, is when you paint on a real thick stroke, it will get thinner as it dries, because, as I've mentioned before, the water leaves that stroke and it becomes, by volume, smaller. Whereas in an oil stroke, it dries by oxidation, and it won't diminish at all, the thickness at all. So the main thing, though, is that the appearance of the thick stroke with all the variegated color will remain, so you don't have to worry about that. Actually, the paint drying thinner will actually help you in your subsequent layers of paint that you add onto it. And we will be exploring a way that you can sort of, you might say, oil up an acrylic canvas. Obviously, you don't use oil, but we'll be using a water-based medium, and put the medium on the canvas and go back in and paint wet into wet, you might say, over a dry layer. The palette I'm using is this Masterson palette. It's a Stay Wet palette, and it works really good. This top is sort of like a Tupperware top. It's my original colors were all on this piece of this paper towel, and I just spray it with the spray bottle, and it stays quite wet. So here's my painting, and as you can see, I've got a pretty good start on it. I did it a couple of days ago, and this was the result. And so you can see the paint's fairly thick, especially in places like the sky there, and you can see the red of the canvas is showing through a little bit. So I try not to get too diligent there. I let a little color show through, and it adds a bit of vibration. Now, another thing I've done here to prepare the canvas is I've added a layer of acrylic medium, and this will keep the surface of the paint from being too absorbent. Now, if I just gessoed it up and started painting in acrylics on it, it would soak the paint right into the canvas, and that would be bad. Now, here's some of my paint. I use primarily golden paint because it's very full-bodied, very thick, and I like that feel. It feels more like oils to me, what I'm used to. I'm going to be using my 9-value grayscale to match my values. And there's some more paint. And I do use a variety of acrylics and oil brushes. Oil brushes will be damaged fairly quickly with acrylics, but they give a texture that I really love. Now, this is a gel that I get from Utrecht, and you can see it's very clear. And when you put this on, you don't want to put it on too thick. I mean, it can disrupt cross-linking of the different layers of paint. So put it on thin, and it's actually quite thick. Now, here's my palette, and I've used my grayscale to pick out mostly like 6 value, 7 value grays. Some of these are a little lighter. I've tried to keep the color very broken, and I might add just a little bit of red to, you can see how that's maybe a bit much. Add a little bit of green into that. I've sharpened the end with a pencil sharpener, and I may scratch into the canvas with that. I don't know. We'll see. Now, some of these strokes will be fairly fat even when they dry, but a lot of them will dry down fairly thin, dimensionally. But it'll still have the look of a nice, fresh, thickly painted canvas, and that's what we want. Now I'm going to paint just a little darker over that, where that Terminator, where that shadow goes by. That'll look really nice. You can see, I mean, I'm painting right over dry paint. I mean, it's just, there's not a problem. It just goes right over. It's fairly straightforward. Now you can see here I've mixed up some lighter yellows. I've mixed quite a bit of red into it. It's all very, very broken. I haven't overmixed. And the value is probably about, I'd say like about a 6 to a 7. And those will be perfect for the hay bales in the front that are very light. Okay, so I really desperately need to stand back and take a look at this, because there's a very good chance that this might not be reading correctly, and I need to make an assessment. I stepped back and I could clearly see that this hay bale, wasn't very dimensional, so I needed to get some little bit of shadow going here. It's got to have, like it's sitting on the ground.